at 7:37 p.m. Roll call.
Councilman Russell,
Present.
Councilman Miller,
Present.
Councilwoman Austin,
Present.
Councilman Baum,
Howdy.
Councilman Wishick.
Here.
All right. Will everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. I guess first, are there any amendments to tonight's agenda? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move right on to public request to speak. Is there anyone signed up from the public? All right. We will move on to new business, and up first we have letter A, ordinance 2017-15, and would someone please read that in its entirety on first read?
Town of Whitestown, Indiana, ordinance number 2017-15, an ordinance concerning assistance by the Town of Whitestown in funding the Ronald Reagan Parkway. Whereas the Town of Whitestown, Indiana, is a municipal corporation and political subdivision of the state of Indiana, established and operating pursuant to Indiana Code 36-5 and other applicable laws, with all of the rights, powers, and responsibilities attendant thereto. And whereas the town has exclusive jurisdiction over, among others, streets, alleys, sidewalks, watercourses, sewers, drains, and public grounds inside its corporate boundaries, and whereas all of the area within the corporate boundaries of the town further constitutes a redevelopment district under the jurisdiction of the Whitestown RDC for redevelopment and economic development purposes, and whereas the Whitestown Town Council has previously established the Whitestown Redevelopment Commission pursuant to Indiana Code 36-7-14 as a governing body of the Whitestown Redevelopment District for the purposes of economic development, redevelopment, and related infrastructure projects within Whitestown. And whereas local government financing for economic and redevelopment projects within the town are administered through the Whitestown RDC, and the Whitestown RDC has consistently acted in the best interest of Whitestown and its residents. And whereas Boone County, Indiana, and the Boone County Redevelopment Commission previously established the I-65 West Economic Development Area and issued bonds payable from allocated TIF proceeds from incremental assessed value within the I-65 West EDA. And whereas subsequent to the establishment of the I-65 West EDA and issuance of the I-65 West bonds, the town completed annexation of all or a portion of the area within the I-65 West EDA and assumed responsibility for municipal services, including street and roads therein. And whereas as a result of the annexation, the I-65 West bonds have been paid from allocated TIF proceeds from increased assessed value, incremental assessed value in Whitestown that is in the I-65 West EDA. And whereas the I-65 West bonds are scheduled to fully mature and no longer be outstanding on February 1st, 2018, and whereas pursuant to Indiana Code 36-7-14, the Boone County RDC cannot issue new obligations from the I-65 West EDA without the consent of the town, and once the I-65 West bond obligations are no longer outstanding, the Boone County RDC will no longer receive the allocation of tax proceeds from the annexed areas. And whereas Boone County, the Boone County RDC, and the town entered into an interlocal cooperative agreement on or about July 21st, 2014, wherein the parties further agreed and reaffirmed that the town's consent shall be required for any future issuance of bond obligations payable from the I-65 West EDA, including any refinancing of the original bonds. And whereas, as a result of payments made by the town under the interlocal agreement, the issuance of any additional bonds from the I-65 West EDA has a negative and detrimental impact on Whitestown's fire protection service. And whereas other portions of the I-65 West EDA have subsequently fallen under the jurisdiction of the town of Zionsville, Indiana, which further complicates the ability to finance additional projects from the I-65 West EDA. And whereas Boone County, through or together with the Boone County RDC, is now proposing the construction of the Ronald Reagan Parkway in southern Boone County, the significant portions of which will not be located in Whitestown, and Boone County has requested Whitestown's assistance in using tax increment financing from development within Whitestown to help fund the Ronald Reagan Parkway's construction, which financing would be further secured with a pledge of local income tax from Boone County in order to make the bonds marketable. And whereas Whitestown anticipates additional important infrastructure projects for economic development within Whitestown that will potentially need to be funded for that area, which projects may include but are not limited to upgrades to Whitestown Parkway West, upgrades to Indianapolis Road, the construction of Exit 133 interchange, upgrades to County Road 750 South, and the purchase of property for parkland and major development, which projects Whitestown estimates may cost in excess of $32 million. And whereas in addition to these projects, Whitestown recognizes the importance of the Ronald Reagan Parkway and the importance of well-planned growth to southern Boone County. And whereas the Town Council desires to reaffirm Whitestown's willingness to assist in the funding of the Ronald Reagan Parkway, and whereas the Town Council desires to clarify the mechanism by which Whitestown can and would assist in the funding of the Ronald Reagan Parkway, to wit, by pledging a portion of TIF revenue from a to-be-created Whitestown Economic Development and Allocation Area established by the Whitestown RDC in accordance with Indiana Code 36-7-14, which would include all or some of the area in the I-65 West EDA that is now a part of Whitestown as a result of the hereinbefore referred to annexations. And whereas this funding mechanism has distinct advantages over the issuance of new bonds by Boone County and or the Boone County RDC from the existing I-65 West EDA. And whereas TIF revenue from a newly created Whitestown EDA can be pledged by the Whitestown RDC to bonds used for the Ronald Reagan Parkway with no material difference to the actual construction thereof in Whitestown, and Boone County will still be able to pledge LIT as a backup source of revenue for such bonds. Now therefore be it ordained by the Town Council of the Town of Whitestown, Indiana, as follows. Section 1. Upon expiration of the I-65 West EDA, Whitestown is willing to create a new Whitestown EDA south of Whitestown Parkway through the Whitestown RDC. Whitestown anticipates beginning the formal process of creating the new Whitestown EDA once the I-65 West EDA expires, which is anticipated to occur no later than February 1st, 2018, unless the Boone County RDC terminates that portion of the I-65 West EDA within Whitestown sooner. Once the Whitestown EDA is created, Whitestown through the Whitestown RDC will have the ability to capture the tax increment from the increases in assessed valuation of properties in the Whitestown EDA in accordance with Indiana Code 36-7-14. Whitestown through the Whitestown RDC could then pledge a portion of the TIF revenues towards constructing those portions of the Ronald Reagan Parkway that will be located in Whitestown that are in, serving, or benefiting the Whitestown EDA, in addition to additional infrastructure projects which may appropriately need to be funded from the Whitestown EDA. Section 2, the creation of the new Whitestown EDA is subject to approvals of appropriate Whitestown bodies and procedures under applicable laws. Section 3, consistent with and to effectuate the provisions of this ordinance, the town does not consent to the issuance of new or additional bonds or the entering into leases by the Boone County RDC or Boone County payable from tax increment from the I-65 West EDA and or a special tax levied on property within the I-65 West EDA. Section 4, this ordinance shall be in full force and effect from and after its passage. That was first reading.
Okay. I'm going to have Dax come up and make a few comments before we go on to seeing whether we're going to do second read, if that's the will of the council. But I'm going to have Dax come forward, and then we can have some conversation amongst the council. All right? Come on down.
So, sometime in November, I think it was a little towards late November, I received a phone call from county commissioner to discuss the potential to, this EDA currently has a bond issued. And as you read, when that bond is paid off, or whatever the legal term is, when it closes, then that triggers the closing, essentially, of this EDA. Received a phone call sometime late November concerning the extension of the last payment, which is around $60,000, I believe, of that bond, so that discussions could be had concerning taking substantial bonds out for the initial construction and engineering phases of the Ronald Reagan Parkway, a road that we've been talking about for 15 years in this county, anyway. And multiple meetings have been had since then, because we as a town have had multiple projects come to us in this area, economic development wise, and those projects, we always have to tell them that, you know, this TIF is not ours. They always ask us for TIF. It's not ours. There are other projects that we need to do as a town that our residents are very concerned about, that we could do these projects out of this particular TIF that we would create after this EDA expires, and to essentially to take a bond out and take a substantial amount of revenue from this TIF in such a short amount of time to fund the Ronald Reagan Parkway, which really is a county-wide parkway, but really is only a 3-mile stretch into Boone County, seemed like something that we should have been talking about probably for a year, at least. So we've had multiple meetings with Commissioner Wolf. Councilperson Austin had a meeting with him. Councilman Miller had a meeting with him. I've met with him a couple of times of figuring out a way to make this work. What you have in front of you, we believe, is in the best interest of the citizens of Whitestown. Let's remember that the majority of the development and increment or allocation revenue that's going to come into this area is Whitestown development. As a matter of fact, I can't see at this point any other development in the near term, 5-10 years, it's going to happen that's not going to be Whitestown driven development. That's our town staff working on it. That's our town police that are paying attention to it. And so with that growth comes other issues that need to be dealt with for our residents as a whole. To take all that revenue essentially, or a good portion of it, and pledge it only to one highway project seems a bit foolish for our residents. But we certainly want to cooperate, because it is a piece of infrastructure that will enter the county in Whitestown. The gateway will be through Whitestown in southern section of town. There will be economic development opportunities on the route in that particular area. You know, and Whitestown may be in the catbird seat there, because I remember when Zionsville was reorganizing with Perry, that they made it pretty clear that there wasn't going to be any industrial, commercial, economic development happening in rural Perry. So I guess if the Ronald Reagan runs through rural Perry, or rural Zionsville now, it remains to be seen whether they've changed their mind on that. So a good portion of the economic development in the rural Perry area will be in the Whitestown portion of rural Perry, or at least I'm assuming so. So what you have in front of you is, we think, a gesture that is not an olive branch, but it's a good faith gesture from us to state we would like control of this particular area for TIF purposes, and we would pledge to you support for the Ronald Reagan, but the support for the Ronald Reagan comes after the needs that we need for our Whitestown residents, as opposed to the wants that the county needs for the Ronald Reagan. So that's where we are today. Do you have any questions so far? Part of those projects are, Ty Reinhardt is here tonight from Beezer Homes. Beezer is currently in discussions with Baptist Homes to be the developer of a substantially large number of homes in the Golf Club of Indiana PUD. Those homes will be age restricted. Age restricted homes can capture increment. So we've had this discussion. And a substantial amount. They're asking us, as part of that, they would want to come to us and ask us for proceeds to do a bond proceeds to upgrade some infrastructure in the golf club. One of those being County Road 525 South, or East, 525 East, which is Cardinal Drive, I believe, as you head down into the golf club. A couple of bridges need to be built, the road needs to be widened in order to kick off efforts to develop this. So what you have in front of you, there's a handout I gave you. Ty, you want to come up? Their total estimated assessed value of the homes is $72,963,000. That's just the homes in the Golf Club of Indiana. There will be some commercial retail built by Baptist Homes on the Whitestown Parkway frontage, so there's additional revenue in the GCI development that can be captured in the allocation area. Okay? So why don't you briefly tell them what you talked to me about and how this could be detrimental and impact negatively if you didn't have the ability to do something creative from a financing perspective in a public-private partnership with the town.
You have a maps I'll hand out.
Maps would be great. While he's getting your maps, there's another development called Green Park, Verus Partners, that has north of Whitestown Parkway. Green Park will actually be about 2.5 million to 3 million square feet of industrial commercial space with a substantial investment into this area from an AV perspective. Verus was in to see me not long ago, and they would ask for TIF as well to build a road that connects Whitestown Parkway to Indianapolis Road that goes right through the middle of Green Park. It makes sense to not have people using the roundabout to get in there if you're coming from the west to help them. That infrastructure cost me, I've estimated, about $3.2 million. So, Ty, the microphone is yours.
Sure. Thanks. Good evening. Hi. And whoops. All right. My name's Ty Reinhardt with Beezer Homes. And what I've given you is our concept plan for the Golf Club of Indiana. And in the handout that Dax gave you, it shows there are going to be about 600 homes. We're hopeful that we can do it as an age-restricted residential community. We're planning to have a large community clubhouse and recreational facility of at least $3 million, so it'll probably be 7,000 to 8,000 square feet. Excuse me. And as you can see the layout, as it was originally conceived, there were first two entrances, one to the west, what's the county road to the west? So the county road to the west, it was over here.
475.
Yep. 475, or is it 7725 down here on the south? So we only had two entrances, one to the west and one to the south. And as we really evaluated this, there's really no way we could be successful if we're driving traffic, if community, people coming into the community would have to drive all the way out to the county road and then down into that entrance, or all the way to the south. So talking to Baptist Homes, we persuaded them, and well, they obviously agreed, that the only way this community is going to be successful is if the main entrance is off of Whitestown Parkway, and we bring the boulevard in, and then we connect that road over and all the way through. And in the PUD, there's a requirement that the overall neighborhood in Baptist Homes is responsible for bringing a road that connects all the way from Whitestown Parkway all the way through the community down to the south. So as Dax had already alluded to, this is problematic. The entry boulevard coming off of Whitestown Parkway, well, the development for that Baptist Homes is planning, which would be perhaps an assisted living facility or some multifamily or some commercial, that's several years away. So we have to bear the cost of building that entry all the way back, and then the two floodways, you can see the two creeks over to the west. There are two bridges of $1 million each that we have to cross to get all the way across. So financially, it's really really not feasible to build all that infrastructure to come in just to start the project. So that's really where we need the help, is to help with the road construction to get the primary entrance built, and then across those two bridges to get all the way through to the county road to get the project started and off the ground. And our hope is that we can start about this time next year. So we're going through the planning stages, and we'll be back in front of the council and with the platting, and hopefully get started in April of next year. Any questions about it?
Council?
So in the ordinance you have, thank you, Ty. In the ordinance you have also, I think, $32 million in projects. Is that what we stated, Dennis? Those projects would be, here are examples of those. Probably the number one complaint we get from our residents, especially those that live to the east side of the interstate, is exit 130. And in NDOT's new model of working with communities, it's highly unlikely that they're going to come in and reconstruct exit 130 without us putting money into the hopper, even with the passage or the imminent passage of a fairly decent road funding bill that they came up with today. I still don't think we're going to be able to go to NDOT and have them accelerate that project without us putting skin in the game to the tune of probably $8-9 million. That's probably the number one most important infrastructure project that we have in the town of Whitestown, not a new terrain Ronald Reagan way west of town, which few of our residents will likely use very often. Second, Whitestown Parkway, as it heads west towards 267, is a cow path. It's very dangerous. You have power lines very close to the road on either side. And if you all remember that, you all that were involved in the 2006 Supreme Court testimonies where this EDA took a bad turn then, the reason for this EDA to be created, one of the main reasons, was to upgrade Whitestown Parkway, which was then County Road 650 South, as it headed west towards 267. Well, 10 years later, we got some gravel shoulders and a resurface. It needs to be a Super 2. We need to move the power lines. It's a very dangerous road right now, and a lot of traffic coming over from Brownsburg, especially if the Ronald Reagan does come in, then there will probably be an interchange off of Whitestown Parkway. You don't have to do it anyway. So that's estimated between a $10 and $12 million project. Some people have estimated that we can do it as little as 6 to 8. If we do it right, it's probably going to end up being, if we do it right, curb and guttered, Super 2 like Perry Worth, it's going to be a substantial amount of money. Next would be the purchase of ground. We have an opportunity, the town does, to purchase ground west of the interstate and just a bit north of Eagle's Nest, that we could do some community type development, parks. We lack in all of those on this side, and right now if we're going to buy ground, we got to do it quick because our land values are increasing rapidly. Next would be the upgrades to Indianapolis Road. So if the state does in fact give permission to toll the interstates, which in House Bill 10002 it wouldn't come for like 5 to 7 years anyway, but even in 5 to 7 years, if I-65 somehow were to be tolled at Highway 52, which is the rumor, you're going to get a lot of people dumping off onto Indianapolis Road, which turns into Lafayette Road, and that'll be their route to Indianapolis. We need to be way ahead of that move. So that would be upgrades to Indianapolis Road, likely all the way from 267 down to the town border, but certainly from the roundabout south towards Eagle's Nest and Westport Landing, and what could be substantial development from a community perspective and private for-profit perspective soon. I think there are a couple other items listed. I will stop talking, but those are major projects that this TIF area could help fund over the course of the next 25 years if we were to create our own. Very little development has happened in this EDA. So the base will not be too affected by closing it and starting a new one. Very little development has happened. So what this essentially is saying is we are supportive of the Ronald Reagan. So anybody that says otherwise doesn't have their information correct. We're supportive of the Ronald Reagan. There are other communities, remember, that the Ronald Reagan is going to run through that they need to step up likely as well and possibly create their own economic development areas. and make a pledge to do commercial industrial development in those economic development areas, take out bonds in those economic development areas as well. This should not come completely and solely on the backs of the taxpayers of the town of Whitestown via a bond that comes out of a TIF that has no revenue. So the County Redevelopment Commission, I believe, is hearing a resolution on Friday, tomorrow, that talks about this, of taking out bonds. They can't do without our consent, but taking out bonds in this EDA, and mind you, what I just said was there's been very little development, so there's really no revenue, very little revenue being produced in this EDA. So you're funding a road project. I think the county's idea was COIT would be first with TIF backup, and then it would eventually flip to a TIF bond with COIT backup. We're willing to help in that process. Any questions? Okay.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I would make a motion to suspend the rules and read by title only. Ordinance number 2017-15, an ordinance concerning assistance by the town of Whitestown in funding the Ronald Reagan Parkway.
Do I have a second?
Is it second?
All right, we have a motion and it has been seconded. And is there any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Motion's adopted 5-0. Rules are suspended.
Town of Whitestown, Indiana, ordinance number 2017-15, an ordinance concerning assistance by the town of Whitestown in funding the Ronald Reagan Parkway. That was second read. Mr. President, I recommend we adopt. I make a motion we adopt. Ordinance number 2017-15, an ordinance concerning assistance by the town of Whitestown in funding the Ronald Reagan Parkway.
Second. We've got a motion and it's been seconded. Is there any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Ordinance is adopted 5-0. All right. Is there anything else before we adjourn?
Mr. President, I make a motion we adjourn.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Meeting is closed at 8:05 p.m.